So let's begin right away. Take a moment. We will take a moment to establish a good motivation as best we can. Have this attitude that all sentient beings must be freed of suffering and the causes of suffering, which are the result of dualistic fixations, conceiving of an I when there is none, and conceiving of others. And this delusion is the fundamental cause of the suffering of all sentient beings. And in order to uproot that suffering in ourselves and all beings, then we are entering the path of the Bodhisattva. And the path of the Bodhisattva is the methods, the conduct, and the behavior and comportment of those who are aimed at wisdom. And this path of wisdom has this inseparable component of compassion. And so with this twofold motivation, or this twofold attitude, with our wisdom, our wisdom qualities directed towards enlightenment, and our compassionate qualities directed towards relieving the suffering of sentient beings. And now we are undertaking the Dharma practice of listening to the teachings on that very path of awakening. So at this point, we are in the 8th chapter of the Way of the Bodhisattva, which is concerned with meditative concentration. And there are three sections in this teaching. One is the teachings on how to come to a state of contentment, which is free of the threat and danger of disturbing thoughts. And then the main practice of developing meditative concentration. In this case, Shantideva is taking the training in bodhicitta as the object of meditation. And in particular, the two practices of equalizing oneself with others and then exchanging oneself with others. And so now we are, we've covered equalizing ourselves with others, and now on the basis of that, actually it's one, this is a sequential, this chapter, all of this is sequential. So on the basis of developing some familiarity with what it feels like to equalize oneself with others, following in Shantideva's example. Then there is the active exchanging oneself with others. And we are up to the verses of starting on verse 134. And these 6 verses have to do with reflecting on why this practice is so necessary. And as we know, Shantideva's approach has typically been one of engaging in introspection, basically always talking to his mind and reminding his mind, and in some chapters going to battle with his mind and so forth. And this introspective approach usually covers the topic of the main topic, as well as what the benefits of it are and what the disadvantages and dangers there are in not practicing the subject of each of these chapters. And so now he goes on these next 2, 4, 6 chapters on why it is necessary. And of course, for us, we can just take each one of these verses and use it as a introspective conversation we have with ourselves, to sort of embed these thoughts in our mind and uproot our habits, both our superficial and more subtle habits. And so here he starts with all the harm with which this world is rife, all fear and suffering that there is, clinging to the I has caused it. What am I to do with this great demon? So then we're reminding ourselves, as actually, I guess we could either take this as direct instructions and just lift it completely out of this and apply it, or I don't even know, maybe there's no difference, but or through having such regard for Shantideva and such wanting to emulate Shantideva, then if Shantideva is talking to himself in this way, talking to his mind in this way, then following in his example, emulating Shantideva, then I also will do the best I can in cultivating and training my mind in these thoughts. So we can think that all the harm which this world has, all the aggression, all the greed, all the pain and suffering that we see every day, think about every day, then specifically the suffering, the fear and suffering that there is in our own lives and in general as a human, as it's taught a human life, the four rivers of birth, old age, illness, and death that all humans undergo. And then the inner sufferings of the human world of not getting what we need or want, getting what we need or want and losing it or having to protect it, getting what we don't want, and all the effort of trying to avoid getting what we don't want and getting rid of it when we do get what we don't want. These are all the sort of the psychological sufferings that humans experience. And all of that arises from clinging to a non-existent I, a non-existent feeling that there is a person with an identity that is me. And that's been the, what am I to do with this great demon? So this refers to the Rudra of ego clinging as a demon. The three Rudras of thoughts, words, and deeds, ego clinging. And this is called a demon here because it has a deadening effect on our spiritual practice, if we happen to have a spiritual practice. And also then it prevents beings from escaping suffering in the now and in the future. So what am I to do with this is kind of basically we should think like, what good is it? What good is this ego clinging? If it's the source of all the suffering, and it's clinging to something that does not exist, and it causes suffering, and what good is it? What good is clinging to it? So if this I is not relinquished wholly, if this clinging to an I is not completely uprooted, sorrow likewise can't be avoided. So if we don't want to undergo the suffering of disappointment, anxiety, and then all the suffering of the six realms, then, in other words, in proportion to our ego clinging, in proportion to this clinging to an I, is our degree of suffering. And of course, this is a theme that Shantideva has brought up several times in the text so far. In other words, as much as we let go of ego clinging, well, I'd say maybe even more in general, as much as we are in proportion to our declining, in proportion to our letting go of clinging, and we also let go of suffering. And then as an example, or as a metaphor, it says if they do not keep away from fire, people can't escape from being burned. So if we're holding a burning ember, or if we're holding a burning object, then that's the degree of our suffering. So as long as we're clinging to that fire, we'll experience the pain of burning. Therefore, to free myself from harm and others from, or to free myself from harm and others from their suffering, let me give myself to others. Let me give away all that pertains to myself and accept others as me, loving them as I now love myself, meaning as much as I cherish, we have this self-cherishing attitude, this self-protective attitude, this self-needing attitude. And now I am exchanging that and making others the object of my love and fulfillment and protection. And I will make others me, basically. And I'll cherish others just like I cherished me now. So there's an assumption here that even though ego clinging is as you said, it gets a very, ego clinging, of course, that's the worst reputation in Buddhism of anything is ego clinging. But the assumption is we have it. So what to do? We just can't philosophically talk around it or talk ourselves out of it in that way. We need, so here Shantideva is, okay, here's someone that has a healthy self-clinging. And so what that person does is they take that self-clinging and exchange it from one to all. And just as whatever one does to support oneself, now that shifts around, and that same ego clinging now is clinging to others. And so we should make every effort in the training of giving oneself to others and accepting others as being myself and cherishing others as now I cherish myself, that idea. So when we do that, as he's saying here, of this you must be certain, O my mind. So we should tell ourselves that, for I am now beneath the rule of others. Now I belong to others. So we should contemplate that, or make that a mandate of how our mind should think. And resolve that, and now no longer shall you have a thought, a self-centered thought, that does not wish the benefit of beings. So we should have no other concern than the welfare of others. So this verse is to reiterate and to drive home and to tell our mind that this is what it's going to do now. And the next 138 verse is, my sight and other senses, now the property of others, to use them for myself would be improper, and it is likewise disallowed to use my faculties against their owners. So everything that I use to support myself now all that has been given to others. My sight, my hands, my feet, my ears, everything that I use now is the property of others. And I shouldn't I shouldn't steal what belongs to others, which is that. So it's incorrect to use, what does it say? To use my faculties against their owners. That is to say, their new owners, or who owns my faculties, are now owned by others. And so I shouldn't use my faculties that I've given away against them because they belong to others. So in this way, we should counsel ourselves in avoiding angry words and avoid angry looks, because our eyes, our speech faculty, our senses all belong to others. So we need to only think in terms of protecting and supporting others. Thus, sentient beings will be my chief concern, and everything I see my body has, that is to say, all the clothing and the food and everything I have will all be seized and offered for the use and service of all other beings. So for all those who do not have them, then I will offer them to them. This kind of unqualified spirit of giving. So we must, what he's saying is we have to develop this attitude of confidence and courage to give even more and crush this craving and attachment we have based on clinging to an I that doesn't exist. There's a famous quote of Jetsun Milarepa who says you should, in this regard, you should even take the food that you're chewing on and tear it out and give it to others. So that those verses we can use and contemplate when we wonder why it's so necessary to practice this exchanging self with others. Then next comes this the next section, which is very interesting practice. From verse 140, where he says, take others, lower, higher, equal as yourself, identify yourself as other, then without another thought, immerse yourself in envy, pride, and rivalry. So since all the aftermath of ego clinging, all the attachments and desires and irritations and envy and doubt and pride and so forth we have are all contribute to undermining our virtue, as it says in the, I think in the commentary. As soon as a new virtuous thought arises, it becomes tainted and contaminated by possessiveness or pride or jealousy or aggression or competitiveness. And so here then, Shantideva is going through a process of meditation where we exchange. This is a different form of exchange. There's different kinds of exchanging self for others. There's taking on the suffering of others, giving or happiness. Here, we're actually exchanging our bodies for others, and then experiencing as vividly as we can what they are going through when they are experiencing envy. Particularly, he's picking on, not picking on. He's chosen envy, jealousy, and pride. But this can apply to all circumstances. So when it's a little tricky when you're reading this to, I'll try and convey the idea of it. But you think of someone who's destitute, tough life, a beggar, like we see, people out on the street and on the street corners, and these tent setups and all these things. Someone like that, and it's not. And then you think of them as envying you. You're old you, now you're them. And you as a beggar are looking at you as who you used to be. Somebody's, like on this, I don't want to pick on any community, but, somebody's there and they're very sad, depressed, in need, and kind of at the end, they were at the end of the rope, and it looks like they let go even. And then, so you become that person looking at you who maybe were driving by, or you were sitting there waiting to move in the traffic, and with your nice car and your whatever you listen to, and talking on your phone, or all the, you're old you. And now this person, you are now the beggar who's looking at you, and at first is envying you. Just sitting there in your low emission car. And now, as 141 and on says, he's the center of attention, I am nothing. In other words, you feel as though you are talking about yourself, your old self. When we say he's the center of attention, meaning who you used to be. I am nothing. And unlike him, I'm poor without possessions. Everyone looks up to him and they despise me. Everything's going well for him, and for me, there's only a bitterness. I've had so much pain, so much rejection, so much discomfort, so much fear, so much loneliness. And so he's looking at you and maybe chatting away with your friends or something like that. And feel the envy. It's just envy. Then all I have is sweat and drudgery while he's there sitting at his ease. He's great, respected in the world, while I'm the underdog, a well-known nobody. So here's this person driving, completely unaware of my stress, my pain, my knees or ankles, or completely in his own world, successful. And so feel the envy that it feels like, the pain of envy towards someone who's got more. Well, I'm the underdog, a well-known nobody, in other words, I've been sort of, what do you call it, marginalized and a part of a group of losers in the world. And I'm not good at doing anything. And so feel that. So it's not exactly, it's not at all, it's not in the what do you call it, in the tradition of like walking in somebody else's shoes. It's walking in somebody else's shoes, but also they're in your shoes. And like that idea, it's a complete exchange, not just trying to understand or empathize or sympathize with other people, but it's really to uproot. In this case, first is this feeling of envy. And then you think, well, why should they be so aloof? Why should they be so proud? They meaning you previously. That's why it's a little. And he says here, what, a nobody without distinction? Not true. I do have some good qualities. So now this destitute person who's you is saying, well, compared to other people, compared with some, he's lower down, meaning the person that you're envying. Why should I envy? He's below other people. And compared with others, I excel. I'm doing better than a lot of others that I know. And of course, from one point of view, now your idea is coming in. I'm fundamentally a good person. I have even Buddha nature, and I am trainable. I have that quality. There's no, in other words, there's no absolute values. Some are better off and some are worse off. This is true across the board, across samsara. Then 144 says, my discipline, my understanding have declined. In other words, I've all the lessons I learned maybe when I was young or from my parents, and everyone has parents. Then I've gradually, all those values have eroded away because of my failures, and I've extended myself into more and more bad behavior, harmful actions, and self-denigrating acts. But I'm helpless, ruled by my defilements. I have desire, I have ignorance, I have anger, and I don't have the resources that he may have, he or she may have. And actually, if this person driving by is supposedly thinks they're a bodhisattva, they should be helping me. And if he would help me, I would undergo whatever kind of training or purification that it was necessary, for the sake of correcting what it is I lack and have bad habits. But he doesn't do anything, just goes, lost in his own world. The fact is, next verse, as much as he's able, he should cure me, as if he's a bodhisattva. That's what bodhisattvas do, right? And if he would help, I'll be submissive even to his punishments, for the sake of correction. But the fact is, he does nothing for me. He does nothing of the sort. No help, no food, no money. So if he thinks himself so great, but what right does he have for belittling me and those like me? What use are his qualities? There's no use to me, whatever he's so possessed of and so proud of. If he has real virtues, if he has them, they're irrelevant, because he's not using them to help me. So then 146 ends here with, indifferent to the plight of living beings who tread the brink of evil destinies. He makes an outward show of virtues and even wants to vie with sages. So then this is what you are observing when you look at someone better off. You, as being the destitute person, are looking at someone, you have some envy, and then you recognize certain things, and then you see how they have no compassion, and they're they have no compassion to those of us like me, who are on the brink of falling into the lower realms of samsara through the necessity of bad behavior. And yet they come on like someone really wonderful. And they have the arrogance of thinking that they're actually a bodhisattva, that they're on the same level of bodhisattvas who really carry the burden of others. So meditate on what envy feels like and what resentment feels like. And by exchanging this way, it actually antidotes pride and other negative habits. And it also adjusts our behavior by seeing how wrong it is to be arrogant and scornful towards those who are less fortunate, in a very real mind-converting way. So that is the exchanging places with those who are less fortunate as a way of learning what envy feels like and so forth as an antidote. Then the next section is the exchanging oneself for an equal. So like he says in the beginning there on the previous, take others, your lower, higher, equal as yourself. identify yourself as other. Then without another thought, immerse yourself in envy, pride, and rivalry. That's what that verse 140 is, the introductory verse to this area of practice. Now we come to someone who's on the same level, equal to you. And here the idea is to, through jealousy and competitiveness, you exchange yourself for others. You exchange yourself for someone who is kind of on the same footing as you are, your coworker or a friend, something like that, or particularly maybe somebody you have you don't like, basically somebody for whatever reason you don't like them, but there's no, they're kind of in the same status as yourself, and so then exchange places with them and see how it is they look at you, and how then you say back to yourself that I might excel, outstripping him meaning you, him regarded as my peer and equal. In contest, I will certainly secure my fame and fortune, public renown. So here, then you have this agenda. Basically, you're creating an agenda and a strategy to take everything that belongs to them and think of it as being yours. Your reputation, wealth, possessions. By every means, I'll advertise my gifts to all the world, ensuring that his qualities remain unknown, ignored by everyone. So your part of your strategy and agenda is to advertise yourself, to promote yourself, both your spiritual, from a spiritual point of view and a worldly point of view. Because you have to remember, Shantideva is talking to himself here, as it says in the first few verses of the first chapter. I'm just going to give this teaching for my benefit. And he was a monk amongst all the politics and power struggles and strategies of a monastic institution. And so a lot of we can see a lot of things are a reflection of that. So we can easily translate that into our own circumstances. In other words, I'll promote mine and all my qualities, and make sure that his qualities, which means your qualities, the you who used to be you, now you're him. And he's saying that I'm going to make sure that any talent you have will be hushed up. I'm not going to repeat any good things I hear about him, so that he remains unknown, ignored by everyone. My faults I will conceal, dissimulate. For I, not he, will be the object of devotion. So I'm going to basically gossip about other people, about his shortcomings, the others' shortcomings, and make sure that I become respected and have a following of devotees. Yeah. I, not he, will gain possessions and renown. I will be the center of attention. So put yourself in the place of someone who's thinking that way about you, your old you. Now you're, okay. I will take such satisfaction in his evil deeds and degradation. In other words, the slightest little chip in someone's behavior or comportment, I'll gloat on it for a long time. Any bad behavior, any irritation, I'm going to amplify it and exaggerate it in my mind and enjoy feeling satisfied by maybe any faults or flaws in how they maintain their vows, or how if they're a bodhisattva aspiring person, how they're just being selfish, and these kinds of sins and misdemeanors and things. I will render him despicable, the butt and laughing stock of everyone. So my strategy will be to publicly dig up the faults of him. And so this is how you should contemplate exchanging yourself for someone who's on equal footing as you, competitive. And so you're being competitive, basically. You're being competitive. And so then you, by exchanging and feeling competitive towards your old self, it actually will antidote, according to teaching, that antidotes is jealousy. And it also enables you to see your own faults and to stop or to help others succeed, to protect others, so-called here the so-called rivals, equals, but you both want the same thing, to be happy and not to suffer. And so instead of competing, and you see the pain of competing and how the kleshas of jealousy are so bitter and poisonous. And so it'll be much more, your ability to refrain or withdraw when jealousy arises will be much more greasy, will be much more lubricated. Your mind will be much more lubricated by this contemplation to withdraw from indulging in competition and jealousy. And you can turn that and then wish and act for others to succeed. How can I help you to succeed? That attitude, rather than how can I maintain my arrogance. So those four verses, 147 to 150, have to do with the contemplation of exchanging oneself, your body, with another's body who you are equal to. As an antidote to jealousy. Then 151, now we meditation is towards someone better off than you. What is it? Lower, higher, equal as yourself. So here's someone who's better off than you, and so now you are becoming someone better off who has pride, and you're experiencing pride. And so you entertain these thoughts as someone who has pride and looking back on who you used to be. So this conversation is directed towards your old you, and your new you is someone who's higher and has pride. People say this pitiful non-entity is trying to compete with me. How can he be on a par with me in learning, beauty, wealth, or pedigree? So this is how pride is developed, by thinking this way, comparing. You're comparing the earth to the sky. That's an expression. Just to hear them talk about my excellence, my reputation on the lips of all, the thrill of it sends shivers down my spine, a pleasure that I bask and revel in. So this sense of pride, how you are sort of you've been set apart, you sort of you feel that you're being set apart. This pride means being separate and better than others, and how relishing or absorbing yourself in pride sends shivers down your spine. You get goosebumps just thinking how much everyone talks about how great you are. A lot of here we're also undermining the current of the 8 rivers, or the 8 worldly winds, of which praise and so forth are there. The thrill of it sends shivers down my spine, a pleasure that I bask and revel in. So experience that of someone. Even if he does have something, I'm the one he's working for. And now there's some kind of this 153 has something to do with sort of you're the boss of somebody. And so I'm the one he's working for. So as long as he might be, basically you make sure that person knows their place. As long as you do whatever you can to make sure that person, meaning your old you, always stays subservient to him. He can keep enough just to survive, but with my strength, I'll steal the rest away. I will wear his happiness away. In other words, I'll do whatever I can to undermine his happiness by my speech, by my actions. I will always hurt and injure him. I'll make sure that I'm always unpleasant to him so that he'll never feel up, that I'll always be above him. I will always wear his happiness. I will always earn it. He's the one who in samsara did me mischiefs by the 100. So So these two verses here, he's the one who in samsara did me mischiefs by the hundred. I don't know, I was not so clear on this had different interpretations where you're sort of stepping back again and seeing that self-clinging and pride is what has caused you to suffer, which, each one of these has sort of a what do you call it, a moral or a draw a conclusion. We draw conclusions for each one of these. Oh, that's envy. So now, so there's some reflection on what you learn from this contemplation. And so this being this prideful person is who caused me to suffer in samsara. It's the kleshas. There's the ego clinging as a root, and the actions motivated by kleshas are what perpetuate that delusion and create that delusion experiencing suffering. That mind in delusion experiencing suffering from the kleshas. That's what causes suffering, not what this or that person or this or that animal. Those are that's not what causes the suffering. Those are the agents of your negative actions, but the cause of your suffering is your kleshas. That's what catapults you, as Shantideva said previously many times. That's what throws you into a state of suffering, not what someone says or does to you. So this we really need to remind ourselves of again and again. Every time we do reflect on that fact or that truth. So it's the kleshas that cause suffering. It's the delusion of self-clinging that causes the kleshas. Every time we bring that to mind, we purify karma. We purify that suffering. And the sooner and more powerful, more genuine we realize that my suffering is not caused by what other people do or say, then to that degree our karma to suffer is purified. We experience, our life is made up of experiences every second. The degree to which we suffer from those experiences is based on anger and clinging and delusion in our mind. So we, of course, enlightenment means that whole pattern has been deleted. And even because we're still in samsara as bodhisattvas, we're sort of, in one way, we're sort of committed to samsara out of our love and compassion for others. So then, but if we have that, if we're free of the kleshas and free of self-clinging, then whatever we experience of samsara doesn't affect us. There's no basis. There's no basis. There's no ground for karma to land on any longer, and everything becomes instantly purified as a personal experience, and then our compassion becomes an ongoing continuity. Our participation in samsara becomes an ongoing continuity. And so, yeah, even though we might read about the qualities of enlightenment, we could also read about what something tastes like. We can read about, what some sweet dish tastes like. We can read about what some curry might taste like, but we can't taste it. And we can read about the qualities and of enlightenment, but we don't really know what enlightenment is like. But we do know in our own personal experience that when we are clinging to something, and we, even in an ordinary, some outer experience or outer object, say just take an object, we have a clinging to an object, that we know, we've had the experience that when we've counseled ourselves through, when we've been introspective and counseled ourselves to release that, well, you're clinging, that's why you're suffering. So then we get over it through some method, through some counseling. I mean, counseling like reminding yourselves of, say, impermanence. And reminding yourself of impermanence, contemplating impermanence, is a declinging. It's like almost a chemical reaction. You add impermanence to clinging, and it declings. And so one thing we know is that Buddha attained enlightenment. Enlightenment is a state, is it's called a state, I don't know, where there is no clinging. The second noble truth has been abandoned, thoroughly abandoned. The cause of suffering is clinging. And through the path, we come to have the clinging abandoned, and even the habitual tendencies for clinging to arise. And so any method throughout the day to uncling from clinging is your own form of enlightenment in that moment. And that's a good thing. That's something to dedicate the merit of it, just right on the spot. And it can happen just with a certain thought, a certain emotion, a certain person, a certain object. Something, interferes with something on your screen, our screen, the screen, the phone, or the computer screen is really a clinging. We cling to that, and it's the cause of such grief, and so if we can just decling from that, notice how we're so clung to the screen, and then withdraw. Everything can go on just normally as you need to do, but you're not adhering. And then also apply that to your own mood, your own depression, your own elation, your own aggression, your own sort of opinions. That's your enlightenment for the moment. And then that becomes a habit, the declinging. Okay, so then, well, that's that section. That's tough. I mean, that's hard to. Anyway, Shantideva has invited us to do that, and if you try that out, just try and see what it's almost like try to see what his instructions are saying, to do, and then meditate, which is meditative concentration. Don't do this practice, as he says, without distraction. Continue one moment to the next moment to the next moment. Like he said, then, like in 140, he says, then, identify yourself as other, then without another thought, in other words, without being distracted. Like take time. And without being distracted with another thought, immerse yourself in envy, pride, and rivalry. And immersing yourself in these things means there's a lot of trial and resistance and so forth. So it does take some time to get used to and some familiarity. Because what we've been doing, I would assume, is trying to avoid these feelings. And so here, by turning the tables, you're kind of exposing those kleshas, and you're sort of indulging in them as a way of uprooting self-clinging, which is the purpose of this section, of this chapter on meditative concentration. We should remember that this is sort of a preparation for the development of prajna, the next chapter. So again, and after you practice that, after you have some experience with that, then these are Shantideva's introspective thoughts that he applies to himself. Well, that's what introspection is. But this is how he thinks then. Countless ages, O my mind. So he's talking to his own mind. You spent countless ages, O my mind, you spent desiring to attain your aims. So tell yourself that. And what great weariness it was, while your reward was only misery. So God, it was so meaningless. And so here what's being developed here is some kind of a regret at ignoring training your mind like this. Of course, here again, he's back being himself. He's not exchanging himself with others here. And on the basis of what he's put himself through these meditations, he's saying, oh gosh, now I realize that my mind has always just been engaged in pursuits that are now seeming to be completely meaningless. And not only meaningless, but also the cause of misery and suffering. So now we can give rise to a feeling of a good, healthy feeling of regret. And therefore, now most certainly apply yourself completely to the good of others. So therefore, meaning that now I see how self-centered actions cause such suffering for myself and others, I should apply myself to this practice of exchanging myself for others. The Buddha did not lie in what he said. You'll see the benefits that come from it. Of course, then the Buddha is reminding here that the Buddha, how do we say, endlessly taught or taught again and again and again that working for the benefit of others produces happiness. And working for the benefit of yourself produces suffering. Even to the point where, what does it say earlier on here? All the joy the world contains has come through wishing happiness for others. All the misery the world contains has come through wanting pleasure for oneself. Is there need for lengthy explanations? Buddhas labor for the good of others. Childish beings look out for themselves, see the difference that divides them. So in that way, the Buddha, he's saying here, he's reminding himself that everything he's heard from the Buddha in that regard is not deceiving, is not misleading. It's the absolutely genuine truth. And you'll see the benefits of it, having when you progress through the bodhisattva levels, purifying karma and resting in the nature of mind and working for the benefit of others, then as your mind goes through the stages of development towards Buddhahood, then you'll see the benefits. You'll be able to have the wisdom to see how your practice has brought these great benefits, these excellent qualities. All the qualities of the Bodhisattva path are realized, and so then the Bodhisattva is self-inspired, so to speak, inspired by the knowledge, by the wisdom of seeing the qualities of working for the benefit of others. Now we're have some reservations and very strong habits, but we have to inspire ourselves by contemplating and basically teaching, like this week, Friday is the turning the wheel of the Dharma, commemorating the Buddha's Chukorduchen. It's a great commemoration of Buddha turning the wheel of Dharma. The first teaching he gave on the Four Noble Truths. Then also, we also need to turn the wheel of Dharma on ourselves. Convert ourselves to the truth of Dharma by reminding ourselves, by contemplating the teachings, by recollecting, becoming sort of not relying on necessarily on outer circumstances or other people, but relying on your own bodhicitta to counsel yourself and to carry on a beneficial conversation with your mind. So like that. If indeed you had in former times embraced this work and undertaken it, you could not still be lacking in the perfect bliss of Buddhahood. So this is if we had done it, I mean, if we have resistance to this now, and like Chakta Rinpoche always said, well, your resistance is unfounded because you've already taken the poison And why would you have resistance to taking the antidote? And like he's saying here, if we had applied ourselves previously in these teachings, we would actually have the body of the Buddha, a form of an enlightened body with all the 32 major and minor marks of accomplishment. And our speech, everything came from our speech would be melodious and penetrate into hearts and minds of other beings, regardless of language. There'd be no such thing as language barriers. Everything we said would go right to the heart of another person. And our mind would be endowed with all the qualities of knowing, omniscience, love, and power. The three qualities of enlightened mind would be fully evident if we had applied these previously, the teachings of working for the benefit of others. So that's what you could not still be lacking in the perfect bliss of Buddhahood. So we should, there's looking back, we can have some regret, but then looking to the present and looking to the future, we should be inspired. And therefore, just as you identify a drop of others' blood and sperm and cling to it as though it were yourself, now take sentient beings, others, as yourself. So this also goes back to what Shantideva mentioned earlier in the beginning, how we're just clingers, we're just clinging. And we can cling to anything. And at the beginning of this life, we clung to a drop of somebody else's bodily secretions. And that became something that we identified ourselves as being the owner of. And it's only a habit. And so now we're turning the tables on that habit and making others who we cling to. So like he says here now, we should make every effort in this training. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. This kind of brings that section to some soft ending there, and we'll continue with this introspective contemplations as sort of between meditation sessions idea. Okay.